Hello, and welcome to The Brief Insight, your go-to podcast for breaking down the latest trends, research, and policies shaping our world. Whether you're passionate about sustainability, global economics, or emerging innovations, this is where we simplify complex ideas to keep you informed and inspired. If you enjoy what you hear, don't forget to like this episode, subscribe to our channel, and share it with anyone looking for insights that matter. We're here every Monday and Friday, so hit that notification bell to stay updated. Your support helps us grow and continue bringing you sharp, relevant content that sparks conversation. Thank you for tuning into The Brief Insight. Now let's dive into today's topic.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we're diving into the world of fast fashion. Like going beyond those those catchy headlines, to understand the real costs. We've got some great articles here from Fashion Takes Action, Sustainable Foreign, and Project CC.
Yeah, a good mix of perspectives in those articles, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, they really show just how complex this whole issue really is. It's not just about the clothes themselves, but it's about the environment. It's about labor practices, and even how we think about clothes.
Totally. And they do such a good job of showing all those different sides, right?
Right. I mean, like Fashion Takes Action. Let's start with this stat. Clothing makes up over 60% of all used textiles, and it relies heavily on non-renewable resources, especially oil. So, right off the bat, you realize how unsustainable the whole model is, right?
Yeah, it's like built on this foundation of taking, and it's not getting any smaller either. I mean, production has almost doubled in the last 15 years.
Wow.
And our consumption, like how much clothing we're actually buying, that's up by 60%.
Jeez.
So it's really accelerating,
It's like this runaway train.
Yeah.
Like just constantly buying and new trends and all that. And where does it all end up? I mean, Fashion Takes Action says over half of fast fashion, it gets tossed out, thrown away in less than a year.
Yeah. It's crazy. Like literally the average garment, like a shirt or pants or whatever, is worn like 7 times.
Yeah.
7.
That's it.
And then poof, gone.
That's so wild. Does that mean we don't value our clothes anymore?
Well, I think that's part of the issue. Fast fashion, it pushes this, this idea that we always need the newest thing.
Right.
And the prices are so low, it's easy to just buy, even if you don't really need it.
Yeah, it's like the low cost makes us think the clothes themselves aren't that important.
Mm.
And then on top of that, there's the whole recycling problem. I mean, Fashion Takes Action mentions less than 1% of clothing actually gets recycled.
Yeah, and that's like a huge loss. I mean, we're talking over $500 billion lost each year, according to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which is a group that really focuses on that, moving to a more circular economy. They see all this waste as a massive missed opportunity.
Yeah, so not only are all these clothes just going to landfills, but we're missing out on resources that could be used, right?
Exactly. And then there's the environmental impact.
Right.
Project CC goes really deep into that. Did you know that one cotton t-shirt takes 2,700 liters of water to make?
Oh gosh. That's almost 3 tons of water for just one shirt. It's crazy to think what that does to places that are already, struggling with water.
Right. Like a global problem, even though, we might not see it directly.
Right.
And the thing is, that's just the water. Project CC also talks about how 90% of the wastewater from making clothes, which has all these chemicals and dyes in it, it gets dumped untreated into rivers.
It's like a chain reaction of problems. One thing leads to another. Like we were saying, these hidden costs, right?
Definitely. And then you've got polyester, which is what most fast fashion's made of, right?
Yeah.
And Project CC points out how long it takes to break down, centuries. And every time you wash it, it sheds these microplastics. They're everywhere, even in our food.
It's scary to think about. And polyester is also a huge part of fashion's carbon footprint, right?
Oh, yeah. 40% of it, according to Project CC. And, fashion already produces something like 10% of all greenhouse gases globally.
Yeah.
And they say that could hit 26% by 2050 if things don't change.
So we're looking at a massive problem that's only going to get worse.
Exactly. And it's not just the environment that's paying the price. Project CC and Sustainable Amore, they also highlight the human cost of fast fashion.
Yeah, the people who actually make the clothes, right?
Yeah, the garment workers. And, the constant push for lower prices, it puts a lot of pressure on them.
Right.
They end up with these terrible wages, unsafe working conditions, and forced to work overtime all the time.
Yeah, it's easy to forget about them when you're, shopping online or whatever. But Project CC brings up the Rana Plaza collapse in Bangladesh
Oh, yeah.
in 2013,
Yeah.
where over 1,000 workers died
It was awful.
because of, unsafe conditions in the building.
Yeah, it was a real turning point. People started paying more attention. But even after that, Sustainable and More points out, things haven't really changed that much. Workers are still fighting for fair pay and safe conditions.
It's heartbreaking, honestly. To think that even after something that horrific, things are still so bad for so many people. It really makes you think twice about where your clothes come from and who's making them,
Absolutely. Yeah. It really makes you, think about what's behind those low prices,
It does. And it's easy to feel overwhelmed by all of this.
Mm.
But Sustainably More, they point out that we're not powerless.
Yeah.
They say just focusing on individual choices, it isn't enough.
Yeah, right.
We need bigger changes. And that's where they bring in policy and activism.
Yeah, and they had some really good points about that. They talked about the Fashion Act and the Fabric Act,
Yeah, what can you tell me about those? What kind of impact could they have?
Well, the Fashion Act, it's aimed at big companies in New York.
Okay.
And it would require them to map out their whole supply chain, where everything comes from, and be transparent about their environmental and social impact.
So it's all about making things more transparent and holding companies accountable for what they're doing.
Exactly. And then you've got the Fabric Act, which is more focused on protecting workers.
Okay.
So one big thing it aims to do is get rid of piece rate pay, which basically means workers get paid per item they make.
No?
So they end up making next to nothing, even though they're working so hard.
So instead of that, they would get a regular hourly wage.
Exactly.
No matter how much they actually make.
Yeah, it'd be much fairer,
Yeah.
And the Fabric Act, it also tries to bring back more manufacturing to the U.S.
Okay, so that would create jobs here, and less reliance on factories overseas where conditions are often not great.
Yeah, exactly. So both these acts, they represent a pretty big shift,
Yeah.
in how the fashion industry could work, focusing more on, sustainability and taking care of the workers.
Yeah. And Sustainable Women, they make this point that these changes, they didn't just appear out of nowhere. It took people speaking up and demanding better.
Right.
That's pretty inspiring,
It is. It shows that even with this, this huge, powerful industry, we can still push for change.
Right.
And speaking of that, Sustainable Omar, they made this really interesting connection between modern fashion activism and historical examples of how clothing was used for resistance.
Oh, wow. What kind of examples did they give?
Well, they talked about the Zoot Suit riots back in the 1940s.
Okay.
It was this distinctive style that Mexican-American youth adopted, It became the symbol of cultural defiance. Of course, it also made them targets of, prejudice and violence, but it was still a powerful way to assert their identity.
Yeah, so even back then, clothes were more than just fashion, right?
Yeah.
It was a way to challenge norms and express who you are.
Exactly. And they also brought up the Black Panther Party in the 60s where, the black beret and leather jacket, it became this symbol of black power.
Yeah. So fashion has always been tied to these bigger social movements.
Absolutely. And that kind of brings us back to the individual level.
Yeah.
Project CC, they talk about how fast fashion has messed with our relationship with clothes. It's we see clothes as disposable now.
Right. We need new things all the time to feel good.
Yeah. And we're constantly being bombarded by, ads and influencers telling us to buy more. It's a trap.
It really is. But Project CC, they give us some tips.
Yeah, some practical advice on how to resist all that. A good first step, they say, is to delete those shopping apps.
Oh, yeah.
The ones that are always tempting you with sales and new stuff.
Yeah, the ones that send you a million notifications a day.
Exactly. And you could also unfollow those fast fashion influencers on social media.
That's a good idea.
Their whole job is to make you buy more.
Yeah, to make you feel like you need all this stuff.
Right.
So yeah, it's like creating a little bit of space,
Yeah, just to breathe. And really think before you buy something, do you actually need it? Will you wear it more than a few times?
Right.
Do you even like it that much? It's about changing your mindset. It's not about, oh, I want it now. It's about, will I still love this in a year, in 5 years?
Yeah, that's much more sustainable.
Yeah. And, it can actually make you happier with your clothes in the long run.
I think so too. It's like curating your wardrobe, instead of just like chasing every trend.
Yeah, and Project CC, they talk about embracing the idea of a signature style.
What do they mean by that?
Well, it's about, figuring out what styles and pieces really make you feel good. What makes you feel confident, and building your wardrobe around those things.
Yeah.
Creating a look that's really you, not just copying what you see in, magazines or whatever.
I like that. It's like being true to yourself
Exactly.
and expressing yourself through your clothes.
Mm-hmm. So instead of, always needing new stuff, you can focus on creating a wardrobe that you actually love.
Yeah, one that will last,
Yeah, and they also talk about remixing what you already have. Trying different combinations, layering things, accessorizing. You can create a ton of new looks without buying anything new.
I love that. It's like being creative with what you have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it breaks you out of that feeling that you constantly need more.
Right. It's like rediscovering things in your closet.
Exactly. So we've got, changing our mindset, being more thoughtful about what we buy, getting creative with our clothes. What else do they suggest?
Yeah. Are there other tips?
Oh, yeah. They talk about cost per wear.
Okay, what's that?
It means like thinking about the long-term value of something,
Okay.
not just how much it costs up front.
So like it's better to buy like a really good quality t-shirt that will last a long time, even if it's a little more expensive.
Exactly. Because, a cheap one might fall apart after a few washes. In the long run, you might save money and definitely help the environment.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's about quality over quantity,
Absolutely. And Project CC also encourages us to, do some research, look into sustainable brands, learn about eco-friendly fabrics.
Okay.
There are so many companies out there doing amazing things, using organic materials, recycled fabrics, and treating their workers fairly.
It's like supporting the kind of fashion industry you want to see.
Exactly. And the more people demand those options, the more the industry will have to change.
So it's really about making those conscious choices, from where we buy our clothes to how we take care of them and how long we keep them.
Exactly. It's about making those small changes that can add up to something big.
Mm-hmm. And I like how Project CC frames it as like acts of resistance.
Yeah.
It's like we're taking a stand against this whole system that prioritizes profit over people and the planet.
Mm-hmm. It's about reclaiming fashion, making it a force for good.
Yeah, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not about giving up fashion.
Yeah.
It's about making it better.
Absolutely. And speaking of making it better, what about the future? Are there any signs of hope, like any trends that point to a more, sustainable and ethical future?
That's a great question. What are you seeing out there that gives you hope?
Well, Sustainable Amor talks about the growing popularity of circular fashion,
Okay.
which is really encouraging.
Can you explain what that is? I've heard of it, but I'm not totally sure what it means.
Yeah, so basically it's this system that tries to keep clothes in use for as long as possible.
Okay.
So less waste and, using fewer resources.
Yeah.
Instead of that, that old model, make waste, where you make clothes, people wear them a few times, and then they're gone.
Right.
Circular fashion wants to create a closed loop.
Okay, so like cradle to cradle.
Exactly. So the clothes can be recycled or upcycled or repaired instead of ending up in, a landfill.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a bunch of ways to do this. Like some brands are doing clothing rental programs.
Oh, yeah.
Where you can borrow clothes for a while and then return them.
That's cool.
Yeah, especially for, special occasions or things you're only going to wear once or twice.
Yeah, totally.
And some brands have take-back programs, so you can give your old clothes back to be, recycled or upcycled.
That's great. It takes the pressure off of trying to figure out what to do with them yourself.
Right. And it makes sure those materials get reused. So yeah, circular fashion, it seems pretty promising for making things more sustainable.
It does.
And there's a lot of cool innovation happening. Like some brands are even designing clothes that can be easily like taken apart and recycled.
Wow, that's taking things to a whole other level.
It is.
It
And
is.
it shows the industry is starting to think differently.
Yeah, like sustainability is not just a trend anymore. Yeah. It's essential.
Exactly. And technology is playing a big role in this too.
How so?
Well, there are all these new platforms and apps that help you figure out, how sustainable a brand is
Okay.
and what their ethical practices are. So it's easier to find companies that match your values.
Yeah, it's like we have more power as consumers now.
Exactly. And brands are starting to pay attention,
If they have to, right?
They have to. It's like we're all part of this big feedback loop.
Yeah, I like that. So it's not just about buying less, right?
Right.
It's about buying better.
Yeah, supporting brands that are, doing things the right way.
Yeah, being transparent, treating their workers well, using good materials.
Mm-hmm. And it's about, finding new ways to enjoy fashion,
Yeah.
being creative,
Yeah.
seeing our clothes as more than just, throwaway items,
Mm-hmm.
but as a way to show what we believe in,
I love that.
Yeah.
So before we move on, what's one key thing you'd like listeners to take away from all of this?
Well, I think the choices we make about our clothes, they really matter. They affect the planet. They affect the people who make them, even, our own well-being.
Yeah.
But those choices can also create positive change.
It's about being conscious and using our voices to demand better.
Exactly. And remembering that fashion can be a force for good.
It feels like, we're really at this point where more and more people are like waking up to this, seeing the impact of their choices and wanting to do something.
Yeah, it's definitely a shift. And, going back to those articles, one thing that really hit me was this idea of fashion as activism,
Yeah, that's a powerful idea. It's like instead of just going along with whatever's, out there, we can actually use our clothes to like make a statement.
Exactly. It's about being more intentional, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's, supporting ethical brands or even using fashion to bring attention to bigger issues.
Yeah, there's something really cool about that. Using something so personal, to show what you believe in.
Totally. And anyone can do it. It's not about, how much money you have or being a fashion expert or anything like that.
Right, exactly. It's about like the choices we make every day.
Mm-hmm. And just talking about these things, having those conversations, it all adds up.
Yeah, it does. So thinking back to everything we've talked about, it's pretty clear that fast fashion, it comes with a hefty price tag.
Yes.
Like we're talking environmental damage, worker exploitation,
Yeah.
and even, like you said, this kind of mental toll on us.
Absolutely. But the good news is there are solutions out there, whether it's through those policies we talked about, the Fashion Act and the Fabric Act, or this whole idea of circular fashion.
Yeah, and just being more aware as consumers.
Exactly. We have the power to make things better.
Yeah. And I think it all starts with changing the questions we ask.
Yeah.
Instead of what's trendy, what if we asked what kind of impact do I want my clothes to have?
That's a great point. It shifts our focus, from something temporary to something more meaningful. It makes us think about like who made our clothes, the materials, what happens to them in the end.
It's about making fashion a force for good,
Exactly.
not just following the latest fad.
Yeah.
So to everyone listening, keep exploring those ethical fashion resources.
Yeah.
Ask questions, challenge the status quo, use your voice, use your choices to demand better.
You really can make a difference. Every little thing counts, every choice, every conversation. It all brings us closer to a better future for fashion.
Well said. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of fast fashion. We hope you found it, informative, maybe even inspiring. And until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep making a difference.